Hello and welcome to this lesson about writing variable expressions. The learning target for this video is translating words into a mathematical expression. So before we get into anything, let's talk about the difference between coefficients and constants. So let's just say we have 2x plus 3. We have to remember that the 2 here is a coefficient, meaning that it's going to be multiplied next to our variable, whereas 3 is the constant. And this is important to remember because when we're writing expressions, some of the numbers that we're going to see written in sort of long form, one of them is probably going to be next to the x as a coefficient, whereas the other one is going to be floating to a constant, as a constant. The other thing we got to keep in mind is that somewhere in here, we have a variable in these expressions. And so we need to be mindful of that. Remember that there's got to be a variable on one of these terms. Now, let's move on to the next thing. Keywords. So what we're going to do is focus on the 4 big operations. So I want you to make this nice big table. We'll probably extend it a little bit more here. All right, cut it in half, cut each half in half. Awesome. So we have addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So either we're literally looking for these words or we're thinking about, what is the problem? What kind of problem do we have here? Do we have a problem where we're adding things together, where we're subtracting things together, we're multiplying things together, or we're dividing? And so we need to, first of all, be mindful of what kind of problem we have, and then second, we need to read for some key words. So obviously you could have words like add, you could have subtract, you could have multiply, which I'm not going to write all the way out, just mult, or even divide. And they clearly indicate those operations. But some other words might be used. So for example, you should be familiar with the word sum, S-U-M, not S-O-M-E, means the product of addition. And here we have difference. That's the product of, or that's the result of subtraction. Product is the result of multiplication. And then we have quotient, which means you're doing division. So if you see some of these words, they indicate a certain operation. And then addition and subtraction have a lot more. So you might be seeing something like greater, you might see more, you might see something like increase. These are just some of the more popular ones that you'll stumble across. And then subtraction is the opposite. So less, fewer, decrease. And these words could be changed. So instead of saying subtract, subtracting, subtracted, stuff like that. But if you understand these key words, it'll help you with the operation that's being used. And for multiplication, of is often used. By could also be used. You could also have, times could be used as well. And then division, that one's tricky. You're more going to see it maybe in terms of a fraction. So like A over B. And so you might see the word like over. You also might see the word into. So those are some words that could imply division. And there's a whole host more out there, but these are the big ones that I want to make sure that you're familiar with. Now, we have to talk about a warning, and it's all in caps, and now I'm going to underline it in red. Order matters for subtraction and division. Huge warning here. Let's think about that. There's a big difference between 5 minus 3 and 3 minus 5. Okay, one of these is 2, the other one is negative 2. In order, or when you're translating, you got to make sure that with subtraction, you're doing it in the right order. Same thing. If we do 6 divided by 3, very different than 3 divided by 6. So when it comes to subtraction and division, you need to be very mindful of which one is coming first. And so you have to really read the words critically and look for some hints. I have some examples of that a little bit later. But right now, let's do some simple examples of these translations. All right, so the first one, number 1, 5 more than some number. Okay, well, I see more, and so that means plus. I see 5. And then different people write it different ways. I'm pretty lax when it comes to this. I just keep it real simple. I say some number, but some people might say some number a, some number x, some number n. But this means a variable. So that's what I want you to take away from this. Some number, it's this unknown quantity, is a variable. And so what I like to use is just x. It's simple. I like x. You could also use a, n. You can use whatever variable you want. Now, the point is, 5 more than some number becomes 5 plus x. 5 times some number is going to be 5x like that. Now, some students, when they first learn this, will literally write out 5 times x. Nothing wrong with that, but this is just much more compact and efficient. So 5x, that's the coefficient. And in this one, number 2, the 5 is a coefficient, whereas up here, this one is a constant. And so this is something you're going to see a little bit later, and it's just easier to write it as 5x instead of 5 times x with like a multiplication sign or even parentheses or whatever else. All right, something else that throws off some students, twice some number. That's just 2x, 2 times a variable. And so sometimes students get thrown off by twice. Like, what does that mean? So that just means 2. All right, now it gets good. 4 times some number plus 10. So here we have multiple operations. So 4 times some number, we'll break that down, that's 4x. And this is why it's super handy to have it written as 4x instead of 4 multiplication sign x. Because then we're going to add 10 to it, plus 10. And so it's very clear that that's my coefficient and that's a constant. All right. Finally, we have the difference of 3 times some number and 7. This is a problem where we need to take a look at those key words. So I'm seeing difference times 7. So difference means that we're going to be subtracting 2 things. And usually we like to have a more sophisticated expression like 4x plus 10 than just like, x minus 7. But that could definitely be the case. So here I have 3 times some number. That's 3x. Here's 7. And I'm going to take the difference of them. So 3x minus 7. There we go. Now these are the straightforward examples. Let's take a look at these 4 because these are just a little more complicated. So here, this is where we have to take our warning into play. Order matters with subtraction and division. So we look here, 9 less than some number. Well, 9 less than some number is actually going to be a little counterintuitive. You're going to take some number and 9 and you're going to flip their spots. You're going to have x minus 9. And think about this. If I asked you, what is 9 less than 19? What is 9 less than 19? The answer to that is 10. Well, how did you do that? You took 19 minus 10. Same idea. We don't know what this number is. It's just x. So we have to go x and then subtract 9 from it. But if we read it this way, or if it's presented to us in this way, 9 minus some number, that's 9 minus x. So here we saw 9 first, we see x second, and we actually follow that order. Whereas on the left-hand side, we had to invert that order. So it's kind of weird. So you got to pay attention and actually ask yourself, what is this asking me to do? Same thing here. 9 over some number becomes 9 over x, which means that you're doing 9 divided by x, whatever that might be. Versus 9 into some number is going to be x over 9, where you are taking some number x and you're dividing it by 9. So again, order matters for subtraction and division. You have to pay attention and really take your time and ask yourself, what are they asking? Once you've done a few of these though, it gets a lot easier and you kind of pick up on it very quickly. So that's translating or writing variable expressions from words. Good luck with your homework or practice, and let me know if you have any questions.